I'm going to take a motion to call the meeting to order.
So moved.
All right, in a second.
Second.
And there are no other ayes, because we're the only three here. Motion to dispense with the reading of the minutes.
I'll make a motion.
First. You're the only option for a second here. So moved, the approval of the minutes. Motion,
Oh, yes.
Second.
first and a second. All right, public comments. Jerry Davis.
Yes, Josh, thank you. Is Steve Hoffman on Zoom?
Yes.
Steve, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, I got a question for the board and for you, Steve, and a question that pertains to Ryan here. When an applicant comes to the township to make an application for a project, they work with either yourself, Steve, or Ryan to give a preliminary plan what their thoughts are. At that point, they draft a plan, their engineer drafts a plan, and they present it to you, and if it's okay, they're asked to produce a preliminary plan, correct? Is that the process?
Generally, Jerry, we don't always have somebody that presents a sketch plan or an informal plan. Sometimes the township just gets a formal submission right off the bat. But that's not uncommon for it to go through the process that you just described there, or something similar to it.
Okay, and after that is agreed upon by either engineering firm, then you ask them if it's a formal big project, they produce a set of plans, correct?
If they're submitting a formal preliminary or final plan, they will submit an engineered set of drawings to the township, which I will review, and Ryan will review.
And do you request them to submit so many copies?
That's part of so their submission is required to meet the requirements of the subdivision and land development ordinance, referred to as the SALDO. And that ordinance stipulates how many copies of plans and any other reports need to be submitted to the township.
Okay. So typically, what would that be then? 1 plan, 10 plans?
No, it's typically, I don't know if it's 6 copies. I think that it used to be a lot more than that, but I think at some point we pared that down. But I think it's like 6 hard copies to the plan to the township. And reports I think are maybe 3 or 4 copies, and but it's multiple hard copies. But we're at a point now, I typically don't even get hard copies anymore. I just request them electronically. But I believe the township still gets those number of hard copies of everything.
It is 6, and here are 6.
And those 6 are for what, John?
The storage facility.
Sewage for,
Hamburg self-storage.
okay. Thank you. Guys and ladies, the problem that we're having here is, I did some work in some other townships in the past, and my engineer had to submit all these plans, and then I had to go in front of the boards to get approval, and the people on the boards all had copies of plans to look at to make the grant approval that I was seeking, okay? And the problem I'm noticing here in this township is the residents don't have any access to see the plans. The supervisors don't have any access to plans. The board, this board right here does not have any copies of plans, but we're asked to approve things that we never seen. And case in point, last Wednesday, Josh came in for a self-storage, and the first time I saw the plans I was being asked to vote on that night was put on a tripod in front of me. So where's the broken link here?
May I respond? If you would have asked, we have them in the office.
Can we get them, Craig?
Which ones you want now?
Well, we need the plans for everything we just recently are approving, okay?
Well,
H&K
sure, you
is a
just
good
ask me and
example.
I can provide them to you.
Okay.
Because they're in the office.
Is it possible to have some office hours so the public can come in and see them too?
Well, we can put it on the website that they'd be able to come in and look at that. I'd make it
Okay.
available.
It seems like been an ongoing thing here, Steve, that there's no plans, all right?
Well, excuse me.
Jerry, I don't process the applications.
Okay.
When somebody submits to the township, in the past, before everything was electronic, well, I shouldn't say before everything was electronic, because they're still required to submit the hard copies to the plans. The applications aren't submitted through my office, so they get submitted to the township. So I assume that when I get copies of, about the only thing I checked with is that they paid the fee and the application has been filed. I don't, whether or not they've been submitting six copies of the plans to the township, I wouldn't know that because I don't get this, I don't get the hard copy submission. I ask the engineer when he does that, when he makes the submission, to send me stuff electronically in addition to making that hard copy submission to the township.
Okay, that's fair. I just think it's fair as a person supposed to approve these plans has the ability to look at the plans.
Absolutely, and the reason that there's 6 copies that are required is to serve the purpose that you just brought up. So if hard copies of the plans haven't been submitted to the township, that's something that I don't know and wouldn't know.
Okay.
Jerry, you never asked me to look at the plans.
Last Wednesday, I asked about half a dozen times, I kept saying I don't have plans, okay? I still don't have any plans. And Russell wants to put forward those improvement agreements or the various agreements he wants to assign, but we never got a chance to look at the plans. Steve sent the plans, and here's the next problem. And there's on the agenda, I don't want to jump around here, but there's been various people over the last year talk about changes to the plans out there. And Jameson made a comment when he came over, when I was sitting up there, he drew the line and said, well, that changed because they changed the plan. And Steve, the plans that you emailed have no revisions on them, and the plans that were submitted were back in early part of 2023. So I'm hearing comments, there's changes, but I don't know if those are the current plans or the preliminary plans or what they are.
So I can't speak to the H&K cement plan, but I can speak to this, which I have abstained to voting on, just so everybody is aware, because I own this facility.
Mm-hmm.
I started this process in June of last year, and I had to get it surveyed. The first time they saw plans that were very close to this was 5 or 6 months ago, that had to get submitted to the county and had to get submitted here. So I'm here with final plans now to get signatures on, but they've been here for months and months and months and months. Now, how they go from planning commission to the supervisors, like I'm not involved in the next process.
Right.
But what I mean, my thought is, and I think we can all agree, we're here to be an oversight committee, but at the end of the day, the professional is Steve. And Steve is also your engineer, I assume, correct? He's the township engineer?
No, he's only the planning
So-
commission engineer.
So once Steve reviews it with us and we approve it, ultimately, the Township Planning Commission engineer has looked at it against all of our ordinances that have been put in place. And this complies with everything in there with the exception of the waivers that were requested at the meeting, which was no sidewalk and curb, which wouldn't make sense, there isn't any out there. Water service, right? So, I mean, my position is, once it gets beyond here, there isn't a whole lot that's legally allowed to change, because this is all based on all the ordinances that we already have in place. Nothing in here is asking for forgiveness or questions or can I do this? This is based on the giant book that Windsor Township has. But if ultimately the concern is having access to those plans, I mean, Craig has them, but do we have office hours here, I guess is the question. I don't know that we have anybody here all the time, do we?
If people contact
It's
the
by appointment, I
township
guess.
by appointment,
Yeah.
we can make it definitely available.
But this stuff has been here for months.
Okay.
This is the final ones that need signatures, but outside of
I'm
that,
not questioning that,
Right.
Josh, okay? Craig, can we agree that any project going forward, when the plans are submitted to the township, that the engineers and this board has a chance to review them.
Well, sure, we can, right in the office, we can go right over now and give them to you.
Realistically, we get more time reviewing them than you do, because they come in and out of here to get cleaned up before they ever get to you. So we might have a submission 3 or 4 times. I mean, because usually at our meetings, we put up an easel, but then everybody's passed a set, or we share a set, and we all look at them and make comments. And so there's a lot of back and forth at this level.
Okay.
When it gets to you, usually it's gone through like 3 iterations to meet some of the concerns that the planning commission has, and then it's presented to you.
And that's fair.
Yeah.
I will get to it at the appropriate
Yeah.
time, but there's something on that H&K plan and the Cochran plan was missed that I noticed when
And-
Steve emailed that to me.
And that is why there's checks and balances,
Right.
and why there's I mean, we just recommend, we're not
Right,
voting.
I
You guys
understand.
are the ones that are
I
voting.
understand. I just wish I could see the plans.
Yeah, and you have them now?
No, I got a copy email, which from back in early '23, and if there's been revisions, it's not noted on that plan.
Steve,
So-
do you know of official revised plans of any kind, or?
So the planning commission, again, I'm only the engineer for the planning commission. The planning commission recommended conditional approval of that plan, I think, a year and a half ago. And there were comments in my letter, some minor comments, signatures, I think a couple other comments on things that still needed to be addressed that were a condition of that recommendation for approval. So typically, which isn't uncommon, so typically what happens in that scenario is, at some point after that, revised plans will be submitted to the township, but they don't have to go back to the planning commission, because the planning commission already recommended conditional approval with the understanding that any outstanding revisions, whether they're signatures or adding some notes, or, like in this case, one of the conditions was, establishing a lease lot because it was going to be leased. I haven't seen revised plans. Evidently they haven't been submitted. So I haven't seen any revised plans since, whenever, July of 2023 or whenever it was that the PC recommended approval. So the plans haven't been approved yet because they haven't met the conditions yet. I don't know what timeline they're on to resubmit. So I haven't seen any revised plans after the plans, with a revision date after that of what Jerry just referenced.
But I think a big thing with the disconnect is, I think that when we get the original set of plans here, and someone wants to, and we'll keep them out on a table. Because, you know what I mean, so then if we are going forward, we can say, hey, at this point in time, we get into a meeting, we know you're only here, this is where you were, Steve's letter's here, there's stuff missing, you know what I mean, so, but then if the public wants to come in, they can give us a call, and you know what I mean, we could meet them.
What time do you usually get here?
Yeah, pardon?
What time do you get here on a meeting day? Like today, what time are you here?
Usually 45 minutes to an hour prior.
I mean, realistically, that would be a perfect time for anybody that's concerned, because all these stay here, right? You're not taking them home. You don't want these at your house. They're all here. So
You can't take.
there's an hour before probably every meeting that we have here that somebody's opening the door, and these are in the room, whether it's the public or, I served as president of Borough Council in Hamburg for like 7 years, and I mean, there was also no public plans displayed somewhere. I mean, you had to file right to know requests, and then, days later you would get a copy of it. But it's not just Windsor Township that does it this way. That's, there are these committees that are, voted positions for that reason, I guess. But I mean, you shouldn't approve something you haven't seen, so you get the plans.
Okay.
And it sounds like we're getting somewhere. You have at least the first rendition, but if lines, I don't think that you need to take what Jameson put a line on a sketch drawing as, I mean, that's not what's being approved. What's being approved is a plan that is presented that has a stamp on
And
it.
you're 100% right, but the problem is, I can't get any information, okay? There's nothing in the minutes to speak of. If it wasn't for that camera there, I would have nothing, right? So that's the complaint, it's a common
Right.
thread here, okay?
So we have plans somewhere
Yeah.
in the
Right,
office that can be reviewed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Are you willing to show them to Jerry after the meeting? Is
Well, I
that-
can get them, oh, absolutely, when any time, I can, right in the office.
Okay.
I mean, this is gonna be a topic of conversation. You wanna grab them? I guess, get them out. Outside of that, do you have any other concerns?
I have further concerns, but I see on the agenda you have one here about H&K.
Yeah.
The other thing was, Jameson's not coming tonight, was it sketch plan?
No, yeah, I don't think he is coming. I think he's trying to set up a meeting at a later date.
Okay. All right. I'll make some comments later, reserve some time for later on that topic.
Okay. Mike?
Good evening. I happen to live across the street from where the H&K plant will be sitting essentially, third driveway down from Breland and all. My concerns are, and again, I was at the supervisors meeting and just trying to get a flavor of, I just feel like there's a lot of issues not being resolved, like when Jameson came and was up splitting this case. There were a lot of things missing, that there was no permits, and he's doing stuff on the property that it was going to cause a lot of dust in my house, was noise, and blah, blah, I'm not here for that. A lot of this was addressed at the supervisors meeting, but I just feel there's a lot of issues that we're not aware of what's going on with the cement plant. Like one where everybody looked dumbfounded was the traffic study with whatever, anywhere from 30 to 50 to 80 cement trucks a day. Where's that? And this is because I was here at the 2003 meeting on H&K and did a presentation. Okay, at that time I think they said 80 to 100 trucks a day, but that's irrelevant. But there's supposed to be a study done with the state regarding that, and again, really everybody looked dumbfounded with that supervisors meeting.
Steve, do you have any comment on the traffic study? Was that requirement for their saldo, and did they do one?
So, since both roads are PennDOT roads, it's up to PennDOT whether or not they required a traffic study, and since it was determined to be a low volume driveway, PennDOT didn't require one.
Yeah,
So-
so that's a state thing and not a township thing.
That's correct. I mean, technically, the township could have required one, but again, there isn't anything that we could have done with the study had we required it. We can't force the applicant to widen state roads or do any improvements. So there really isn't anything we could have done with the study had we required it. PennDOT didn't require one. So that's.
Yeah, I mean, you're dealing with the state, you're dealing with the county, you're
Yeah,
dealing with the township.
It's just a scary intersection up
Yeah.
there at Monument and 22.
But like he said, that's
Yeah.
the state's decision, and if the state doesn't deem it being dangerous,
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
There we are.
again, back at the Hamburg Borough, we dealt with the same thing.
Yeah.
4th Street, 3rd Street, State Street, all state roads, you have no control whatsoever, which is super annoying.
Hell. The other stuff that was addressed that Jameson, they moved a lot of soil around in there, and understand that is actually residential, where a lot of these cement slabs were propped, and property moved around, the property was expanded. Jerry had brought up in the meeting, there was some, and again, I'm not gonna go
Excuse
into
me, I'm gonna pass this out.
specific,
Per the plan that was, he submitted, it shows you where H&K property ends, and that's the property, that's a boundary line. This is Old 22, that's Monument. That activity is being done in a residential area. Excuse me, just one more map. And if we go back from a history standpoint, from Google Earth, the original dumping site was here, so they can see. The original dumping site was here, they stayed across from there. This was 20 years ago, this photograph was taken. And now we took this area, we're trying to convert it into a commercial holding lot. And this is residential per the plan.
So where the cement slabs are on residential?
So do they,
They
do
did
they
grading
sub,
of the
like the
property.
line for agriculture and industrial actually goes down the middle of a property? I mean, that's all one property and the whole thing is ODAG. Because their property line, that's one parcel and it goes right to Old 22. That's not a secondary parcel in there.
I mean, the best thing is to look at the parcel map.
There's a house obviously in the corner,
Josh.
22 monuments.
On the plans that Steve sent, that's what H&K put on their plan, they put a residential line across it.
Okay.
They put it on there.
Yeah, I mean, that's,
Yeah,
I
but
just
part-
didn't, I didn't realize that was even a
But
thing.
part of the property is in, I don't have, I'm not looking at it right now, but part of the property is in the residential district. I don't know if it's
That is
R2 or
correct.
whatever the designation is, on Old 22. And based on the current aerials from Google, it looks like there's activity, earth moving that's in that area, and that's not what was shown on the plan. So I agree with these people that stuff's happening out there that, you know, that is beyond the scope of, or beyond the limits of what the disturbance was shown on their ENS plans and their approved NPDES, permit plans. And I actually reached out to, Evan Sowers, the engineer for H&K, last week, because to make him aware of this in case he wasn't, and he wasn't aware of it. So, and I told him about the concerns. I said, with Jameson coming, before the board last week, he explained that, there was some activity going on out there, and I let Evan know from H&K that you might want to follow up with Jameson and see what's going on there, because I think there's disturbance going on there that isn't included in their permit boundary for the concrete plant project. So, yeah, I don't know what that activity is ultimately.
But I think, Steve, it's separate.
Yes.
So what
Yeah,
where the
I agree.
where the major disconnect here and the problem is, and I think the biggest problem, we have an H&K land development plan on a section of land, leased land, that's going through land development. Then we have a whole other section where we have no clue what's going on right now. And we're trying to start at where we need to get him to start at process one, which is identify the use of the property. And I think that's the biggest thing we can do right now, is identify the use in because if it's on residential, well, there's uses that are allowed in residential,
Sure.
right? And if it's on industrial, there's uses that are allowed in industrial. We need to know the use of that property and what it's gonna be used for going forward. So I think this, again, and I talked to Jameson, literally like 2 seconds before here. I think one of the biggest thing is getting a zoning application in to because we can't say, hey, this is what we think you're using it for. We need him to tell us this is what you're using it for, and then let him go forward with it.
And it's not just a land use thing, Ryan. And you'll agree with me that just the earth disturbance alone, H&K got their NPDES permit for what they wanted to do, but there's this work going on outside of that permit.
Correct.
So,
Correct.
and I told Evan from H&K, look, even if you have nothing to do with this additional disturbance beyond what you guys wanted to disturb, it's ultimately probably going to hold them up.
But I issued a notice of violation letter, right, for this property. And in my notice of violation letter, I state we need erosion control in front of the county and we need stormwater. Because stormwater management has to happen because, I mean, just if you're looking, I don't know why I'm pointing that computer towards you. I'm sorry, long day. But if you look at, you can tell it obviously has over the 500 square feet of disturbance for even small scale. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, 5,000 square, yeah, 5,000
Yeah,
square feet.
5,000 square feet. So
Yeah, that's nothing.
I think we need to start, I'm just saying, where I'm coming from is just a start of the use and getting plans for stormwater and zoning. And go, because we need to understand where we're going.
Yeah, I agree, Ryan, that it needs to be addressed, yep.
At the supervisor meeting, he kept mentioning the highway dumping plans and stuff. Do we have a copy of that? Like, is he within the boundary that was set in 2006 or whatever that was? Or, I mean, I know he had historical plans, but Jameson's rebuttal was that was a topsoil pile that was stockpiled there, and then it was removed. Like, Do you have access to those old plans and what those boundaries look
This,
like?
this is information that I would need in a zoning application, stating that if there was allowable dumping, what was the written record there? And what is, where can he dump, how much? It'll be very specific if it was given permission for dumping. And you're talking about topsoil, and topsoil to road debris is totally different and follows a whole other
Well,
aspect.
I mean, but this is what this property's been used for. It's been a staging area for
Understandable.
decades.
Yeah,
So like,
understandable.
what were the parameter, like, what were the limits of that staging area in years past, would be
Yeah.
the question. Is there a plan that actually shows that?
Is there anything that shows that?
Did they actually use that as the dump ground, the residential portion, or is that just recently since they're trying to get the dump site cleared to put up the H&K? Was that residential area always littered with debris?
They had stockpiled topsoil, but they had moved.
Further back. It
Yeah,
was further
but
back.
they had moved their whole
The road
area,
front was never-
extended their
That's
whole
right.
area, which was graded down towards, which goes towards the culvert under 22. So, they graded that, and again, some of that was addressed at the supervisors meeting that we saw. But there was a lot of grading work, and Jameson, I was sitting in the corner when he spoke, that he's creating this area for a newer staging area because he's losing his old staging area where HK's going to run his business. But can he do it there, right in front of 22, right in front of our homes? And that's, again, part of my concern standing here.
And that's where the
I
zoning
think-
application would come in place. So
And-
no, I'm just saying,
I
that's
think
where
that
we
the-
need
Yeah.
it from. Sorry,
The
Steve.
the burden's gonna be on Jameson, assuming he's the one preparing the application. If there's an argument that the area was used for, staging and it's a pre-existing use, the burden's gonna be on him to prove that, and whether that's through, historical aerial photographs or other photographs or some kind of plans, that's gonna have to be, he's gonna have to demonstrate that. And, even then, it might be kind of tough to, show that he's not expanding that use. I can't imagine that, construction staging is a use that's permitted, in a residential district. So if there's any expansion of, even if that use did exist to a degree in that area, if it's being expanded, then technically, it would be an expansion of a non-conforming use, and there would be zoning implications. And even if he was successful in demonstrating that it is a kind of a pre-existing use, and they're just doing what was always done there, or at least not always, but for a long time, the earth disturbance component of this is kind of separate from that. And, regardless of the zoning argument, the E&S, the erosion and sediment control, and the stormwater issues still has to be resolved.
It would seem to me that if he can't document pre-existing approved use of that residential area, those cement slabs need to be removed.
And I agree with Ryan, that's why we need a zoning application. Yeah, if he can't prove that, then I would tend to agree, and, Ryan can jump in if he disagrees with that, but I would tend to agree with you.
No, I don't disagree. Like I said, this is why I want to start with step one with the use. That's why I wanted him in front of the board. I want to see I think what the major disconnect in the beginning was everyone thought this development would be under H&K, right? Kind of just, that's what all this was taking place. Now we're understanding we have two separate things happening here. And what I think, from gaining an understanding of looking into this, is we're having an H&K site and we're having a contractor site, it kind of feels like, in my head. But this is one of the things why I think the man needs to state his case, and I need to understand where he's coming from with a zoning application.
Well, you put a stop work order on for now, and,
I sent him a notice of violation, same thing.
yeah.
Yeah, and he is, I mean, to my knowledge, I don't drive by there every day. He told me that until we go move this further, it would stop, but.
I mean, I drive by there every day, because I live just down across from Salem Church. And, it appeared that there's a lot of activity going on. There was a lot of earth moved, there were no silt barriers put up.
And I complained, and they eventually put them up. After the fact.
And so, you know, it
Yeah,
seems
by
like there's
rule.
a variety of things going on here that, you know, the old saying, oh, it's easier to ask for forgiveness than it is for permission. That's not the case here.
Does he know that that's R2 right there, and that the likelihood of him being approved is probably nil?
He's aware of the zoning in the area, yes.
But he knows that where his slabs
I
are
don't
is
think-
actually a residential.
He's aware of the zoning of the area, so it was attached with the letter.
Okay.
Ryan, do you know if a report has been made to the conservation district?
Yeah,
regarding-
when I first got this complaint, I reported it because that's why the bio roll went up. I replayed
Oh,
it.
did the conservation district issue a formal inspection report yet?
I don't think so. I haven't got one. Or I can't remember actually. The unfortunate part is I may have had it in my LTL email.
I mean, typically, yeah, you know, when a complaint comes into the district on something like this, they'll do a very detailed report and then issue a copy of that to the
Yeah,
landowner and
I
also the
was-
municipality.
I was switching companies during that time, so I don't.
Well, the township should have gotten a copy of it if that occurred. I wouldn't have been copied on it necessarily from the district, but it certainly, the township would have been. Now, is there a chance that they went out there, did an inspection and didn't issue a report? I guess that's possible, but
No,
I have to, you know,
I know they did because that's why the bio roll went up.
and then did they stabilize like stockpiles and stuff?
Yeah, they put the erosion control from where that creek is is that the east side?
So do you have any idea, when was it that they put the silt sock in?
Oh,
After I complained, probably 8 weeks ago. Yeah, that's about right-ish.
Yeah, so I mean, presumably that was in response to the report, so. I mean,
yeah, so
there's-
maybe we'll get one, maybe there's one coming then. Steve.
Sometimes it takes them a couple weeks
Yeah.
to issue the formal report, so maybe that's in the queue. I mean, I don't know if it's my position to do so. I mean, I can follow up if someone wants me to do that, or Ryan, maybe if that would, you know.
Yeah, I would, we could follow up, absolutely. I'll shoot you an email.
Okay, all right, Ryan.
So like you said, the traffic study and the soil moved, and what else?
Just other things that were discussed that are still out there with me are the black water. They're talking about having a water containment, which for black water, and I don't know if that takes a look at the sense, the amount of people who are going to work there, truck drivers, the amount of water that needs to be used to make cement and to clean the vehicles. There's going to be a lot more water used and stored, both from having to take water out of a well, and we're talking thousands of 3,000 gallons-ish. I'm just throwing that number out there. It's a lot of water to take out of an area, and my concern is what's going to happen to our drinking water.
Steve,
We know it's a different
didn't
taste
you-
when the earth is being moved.
Steve, didn't you mention at the supervisors meeting that there is no way to limit the amount of water that's used?
Well, I'm not, just so I understand the question, at first I thought this was being directed towards like the,
Well, so at first it started out as the wastewater, but then
is it
it
a
was like,
runoff, is it a runoff question?
no, it's the water being pulled out of the well.
That's one. I'm sorry, I put two together.
Okay, let's handle that one first. Yeah, the applicant had to do what's called a hydrogeologic study to evaluate the amount of water that their process was going to be drawing from the water table. And I believe that, after going back and looking at the report, I did have the report at my fingertips on Wednesday at the board meeting, that it was, 6,700 gallons a day on average, which is about the equivalent of, I think, 17 single-family homes, average-sized single-family homes. And, they evaluate, in that report, the water table was evaluated, and, they look at base flows and nearby streams and that sort of thing. And, 6,700 cubic feet of, or, I'm sorry, 6,700 gallons a day. I think I tried to give a description of what that is. It's basically like a 10 by 20 foot area, like a parking space with 4.5 feet of water, you know, that depth, you know, that's the amount of water. And it was determined in that report that, you know, that wasn't really gonna have any noticeable effect on the water table or base flow in the stream. So, but just to reiterate, and the report was required, but, you know, some of these reports that we can require an applicant to do doesn't mean that we can make the applicant do anything about the results. You know, in this case, the report indicated that, you know, it basically had a negligible impact that, you know, like I said, even if it would say that it had some impact, you know, we don't have the authority to regulate at a municipal level how much a landowner pulls from a well. Whether or not DEP does or the state does, I don't know. But, you know, they did the report. It showed that the impacts were, you know, insignificant, essentially. And that's about the extent that we can require anything relative to water being drawn from a well.
I have a question about that, and it's because I don't understand water, sewer kind of things. So water's being drawn from the well, but it's leaving the site in the form of concrete in trucks. Whereas if it's a residence, doesn't the water stay kind of on site? See what I'm saying? My concept might be wrong about my understanding of how water, sewer works. But if you have like a septic tank and, you know, water in, wastewater out, doesn't it kind of balance? It's not like you're hauling truckloads of water away.
Well, that's a reasonable question. Yeah, and in a lot of cases, maybe, but you do have cases where you have public, let's say public sewer, for example, an on-lot well, you know, where you're drawing from a well and, you know, you're using, you know, your house is using, you know, whatever water is being drawn from the well that ends up going to, you know, into the sewer.
Right.
Which
right.
is everybody in the back of Valley Road is that way.
You know,
They all
so-
have wells and they're on public sewer.
Oh, it's public sewer back there?
Yeah.
Oh. Okay. So that's the same idea.
Yeah.
Water.
Yeah, but I mean, in the case of a property that has an on-lot well and on-lot septic, yeah, sure, I would agree that there's generally a balance there,
Okay.
you know, but that's not always the case. That's all I'm saying.
Gotcha.
So as far as that concerned, they met the requirement that we require, not that there was anything we could actually do about it anyway.
Have you ever heard of anybody, what happens if a well runs out in the area? What if all of a sudden our water's gone?
It has happened. My little brother had it happen and he had to drill a whole nother well.
What if it happened to like 30 families right there? It's just throwing it out there.
Right?
Right. Can I take some of your time?
Sure.
Okay, I think we need to get this all out.
Unless you want to wait to,
No,
go to that.
it's appropriate for what we're talking about,
Okay.
for the water. Steve, I saw that water study you sent, okay? And they took a bunch of plots, average wells, gallons per minute at wells, some cases 2 miles away. But their report talks about 6,700 gallons on average per month. That includes the weekends when they're not working. But on a daily basis, they're talking 7 gallons a minute. They put in their report 6.9, but if you do the math, it's 7. 7 gallons a minute they need to draw is what they're going to be drawing. So it's 10,000 gallons a day. And my concern is H&K hired them, and I understand we can't do anything about it, but they hired them, and so it's their expert giving them the report that they desire. If they don't hit water at 120 feet, when they have to go down 300-400 feet, and they're pulling that much water, I don't know anybody in this room or at that firm knows where the water comes from under the ground. I don't think anybody can predict that. And then they conveniently drew a picture of a draw area, which is an egg shape that goes to the northwest, which is the opposite direction of the other well. And with that being said, I don't know myself, but they have a plant up here in Crumsville where the school has run out of water because they're drawing too much water up there. So the question is for the residents, what capacity do we have to control? We can't stop them drawing water, that's not what I'm suggesting, but my concern is what happens if the residents in the area start having shortages from their well? What's our obligation here?
Or what if they draw twice then?
Yeah, I honestly don't know, Jerry. I don't know what, but again, I don't, anybody that already has a well could start drawing on it, you know, and create the same problem. I don't know what the answer is.
I don't either, I'm just expressing.
No,
what
I
I'm
mean,
saying.
I mean, just thinking out loud here, I mean, if we're really, admittedly, I'm not a hydrogeologist, you know, hydrogeologist, in my position, I gotta look at, a lot of different aspects of, traffic engineering and this component and, other things, so I'll admit, that there could be things in that, that, in that report that might not jive. And if the township is concerned about it, we can get our own, our own hydrogeologist to review it, and, maybe they'll come back and say, you know what, this is totally bogus. And, if they submitted something that's, that's absolute BS, then, there should be repercussions for that.
But, so is there repercussions though? Because you said earlier that even if their hydrogeologic studies showed that there wasn't, like, what can we do about it?
I don't think we can in that. I'm just saying, if it was determined that the study was total trash, maybe from a professional liability aspect, that would be a liability to them. But I don't think it changes anything in terms of how much water they can draw. So I don't know if it really gets us anywhere or not.
So they could draw twice that amount of water and we'd have no response.
That's correct.
You can't stop anyone.
Well, no, I shouldn't say a response. We can have a response, but the township, I don't think, has any legal authority to restrict, how much water they take from their well. I don't think so. But, I would ultimately defer to Russell if he was here because he's the lawyer, but I don't think so.
That might be something to find out.
Well, one more thing following up on this, in there, on that plan that you emailed here the end of last week, they have a waiver request there. It says a waiver has been requested for the required pumping test associated for the water resource study. So did we grant that waiver to them?
Yes, the board granted that, correct.
What does that mean?
It means that they didn't have to do a 48-hour drawdown test. I think that's what it's called.
But that's what we're talking about here right now, correct?
Yeah, it sounds like it, yeah.
I think this is why we want the plans.
Sounds like we put
What
ourselves in
plan? What
jeopardy.
plan? What, I'm sorry, I missed what you said there, Jerry.
What I'm saying is, if it's my opinion that the plans aren't being shared. And I'm not so sure, well, the board made a this board made a recommendation to approve it, but it has to get approved at the supervisor level too.
We only make a recommendation.
The recommendations are made, but it has to get approved on the other side.
Yeah.
Okay, just two more things.
The Board of Supervisors have granted conditional approval.
But they don't have final approval.
Right. The key word is conditional, but, as
Right,
what
they
was
just need to meet the
recommended by the
conditions.
planning commission was granted by the board.
Two final things. One is related still to this, and the other one's a different subject, really quick. Just so, black water, stormwater, again, just living across the street from there, and stream going through our yard starts the watershed for Reading, so what's being drained into there. And I know it's being looked at by the Conservation District, but no formal reports that I've seen yet come about from that. So, just one more quick thing.
I'm sorry, I'm sorry, well, again, with the plans the hard copies of plans that I assume were submitted to the township, and I'll let Craig confirm that, but along with those plans was a comprehensive stormwater management report. It's probably a 300 or 400 page report that's, that was also submitted and should be at the township. Again, I have no confirmation that the hard copies were submitted or not, but they certainly submitted a stormwater report.
Just looking at the lay of the land and living across the street, I know what it's like when we get a deluge. And first, it'll be kind of ugly, I think, personally, but this is my opinion. That what if we get a deluge and their runoff put together, contaminants, blah, blah, blah. So I just think it's of a great concern to the area and wildlife and so forth. So, something else we have to ponder.
Well, the land development plan incorporates, I think there's, again, I don't have it open in front of me, but, there's at least one detention pond. I don't know what else is, what else is on there, but I mean, they had to meet the requirements of the stormwater management ordinance, so that there are improvements that are incorporated into the land development, just like any other land development design would have been required to comply with. So, and again, they also had to go through the process of getting the NPDES permit, where it's additionally reviewed by the district for post-construction stormwater. So it's not like they're not just coming in here building this and not doing anything about the runoff. They do have to provide improvements to attenuate,
Sure.
runoff rates and that sort of thing.
I just think it's a dual issue just because of the changes that Jemison has made in the terrain. It's pretty great.
That's an excellent point. I mean, obviously, when I reviewed it and the district reviewed this, we didn't consider, any area beyond what was presented in the land development plan. So, getting back to kind of what we were talking about earlier, that needs to be addressed. Anything additionally that's outside that still is outstanding as far as we're concerned.
Okay. Appreciate it. Just one last thing that's a different subject, really quick, someone could direct me the right way. I misplaced my school tax form. Everything's already been paid, but I'm meeting with my accountant tomorrow. And I left a message last Thursday through the email, through the Windsor Township, and telephone call to Becky. I hadn't heard anything back about how do I obtain a copy of do you know how do I get a copy of my school tax form?
You have to
Becky's
have,
the one that's gonna have it, right?
right, well, I would definitely be through Becky.
Yeah, I never heard back from her, so I don't know what, I did this last Thursday because my meeting's tomorrow,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
okay, well, she was notified. I mean,
Okay.
I
Yeah.
notified her about it.
Okay. All right, just not hearing back from her, that's sour grapes over that. All right, thanks, folks.
Josh, may I add a little more to this conversation? Steve, question for you. One of the concerns is on that application from H&K, and I'm going back, we need to look at, the board here needs to look back at the original application that site had for how much impervious was allowed. My point is, the property at that original property north of the residential line, zoning line, right, was established, and that's where all those activities took place. If you go and look online at prior maps. And was that whole site granted as allowed to be impervious? Because they're taking credit for that, all that site as being prior impervious, and disturbing a little bit more area, and then that's why the size of the retention pond that they're putting in is extremely small, because they're taking credit for all this previous impervious. Is that the way the process works?
Well, so I can actually shed a little bit of light on this. The industrial district allows for 80% impervious, and that's a 67-acre parcel. Now, I don't know how much of that is in the residential piece, but
I think, Jerry, correct me if I'm wrong, I think Jerry's question is, that in the calculations, they seem to be taking credit for a lot of, we'll call it pre-existing impervious area. And I think Jerry might be questioning, are they considering more area as pre-existing impervious than what is actually pre-existing? Is that right, Jerry?
Well, so that's a good, I'm not talking about the total percentage, Josh, I'm talking about on that site. Originally on that site, when they're supposed to have some kind of dumping permit, they were allowed to cover 100% of that designated spot. I don't know, okay? But what I'm saying to you is maybe some grass grew since then on some, around some edges. They're going to remove that grass and they're going to count that as new impervious. They're taking credit for all that prior impervious, and thus less stormwater control structure sizes, right? So that's my only question on that, and if that's the proper way to do it, and that's how it's done, so be it, but that's my question.
So, from a municipal stormwater ordinance perspective, like, the township has their own requirements, and then, the state has its own, I'll call them guidelines. Anytime you have a project that disturbs more than an acre and you need one of these NPDES permits. So, the state actually requires that any existing impervious, that you only take credit for 80% of that, okay? Now, what's considered impervious? Well, based on the township's ordinance, obviously, anything that's paved, but it also includes not only pavement or concrete or buildings, it also includes
stone.
Gravel and even compacted dirt is considered impervious. So, unfortunately, determining what's impervious there's sometimes a degree of subjectivity to that. But I don't know if this answers your question, but it is common, it is, industry standard in terms of design to, I'll call it give credit for impervious areas that have been there for a long time. Now, typically your impervious area is typically only grandfathered from the date of when you adopted your stormwater management ordinance. So I don't know what that date is off the top of my head. Let's say it's 2010 or 2008 that Windsor Township adopted theirs. That's when you would look at the site, let's say you go to Google and you look at an aerial from 2008, from that year when that was adopted. That would kind of be what you could consider existing impervious. So if they kind of expanded their impervious area without getting any kind of permits or whatever, they wouldn't get credit for that after that adoption date. That would be, that would be considered new impervious area, just like proposed impervious area on the plan.
Okay, that answers
If
my
that
question.
helps or not, but.
All right, that answers my question. The last comment I'm gonna make here is, so that's the H&K property. H&K plans that you emailed to us last Thursday has that residential line drawn through there. H&K is staying above the residential line to the north of that line. My next question or concern is this, now bringing into the second proposed project here, H&K goes all the way over to the corner of a residential lot that's on the corner there. So what I'm saying is the excavation company does not have any access into that property.
It looks to me, based on public record, that Jameson owns that house too. I don't know if that's true or not, but I mean.
I don't know that.
So he owns that.
So we're going to drive through the yard to get
It's
to
his
that?
property, you could.
Okay. All right, that's that concern. So on the plans, it shows there's an entrance through H&K's property into that subject lot that we're discussing here,
Yeah, is
the
that this
residential.
little, is that this thing right here?
Yes. So my question is that allowed?
I mean,
Yeah, it's allowed, I mean,
because Jameson's family is
they would have
essentially,
to,
they're
they
leasing
would have
this
to have some
land.
kind of private agreement for that access, but, you know, that would, I mean, there's always, you know, like, I'll give you shopping centers as an example. Sometimes where you have like let's say a Target, where they want their own lot and shopping center, so they have a fee simple lot, but they might not have road access, but they have, you know, they have all kinds of cross easements and whatnot. Obviously, this wouldn't be at that level, but, it's not out of the ordinary and wouldn't be disallowed because of that. But I mean, the fact that there's something going on that we don't know what it is, I mean, that's still something that, you know, not to beat a dead horse here, still needs to be addressed, but that alone isn't necessarily a problem.
Yeah, I mean, if I lease something to a tenant, I don't give up rights to the, you know, parts of it.
Well, my concern was after we look at this and he comes back and wants a driveway permit off of Old 22.
Right,
All right, that'd be the next, you know, that's why I brought it up.
right.
Well, and if that happens, Jerry, then he's gonna have to go to PennDOT to get a driveway permit off of 22. And, you know, I don't know if you'd be able to get that or not.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
I know, it kind of brings me back with PennDOT. When you said PennDOT owns the roads through Hamburg and it's always been a problem, you can't really do anything about it. But here's a place we could do something about it. Like here, we have Old 22, you come up over that hill and you have cement trucks pulling out on somebody coming from town. Like, this is where you can prevent, this is where you can kind of intercede a problem happening in the future.
How?
We're still, I'm not exactly sure.
PennDOT doesn't care.
PennDOT doesn't
They-
care, and
they don't-
PennDOT is not only in charge of Old 22, but they are in charge
I
of
sit through
Monument Road
those-
too, is that?
I sit through those Route 61 meetings and 4th Street, and we watch truck after truck hit a car on 4th Street, and we're begging PennDOT to say, hey, this is the damage. We got an insurance company coming saying, this is the amount of damage we've had in the last year from trucks going down 4th Street or people getting injured. PennDOT doesn't care. We got Crumsville where they're gonna make a right-hand turn. They're gonna have 4 warehouses. Trucks are gonna make a right-hand turn where they're saying that people are getting their cars smashed because they can't make that turn. PennDOT doesn't care. Honestly, PennDOT's a scumbag. They don't care. And if those trucks are pulling out and we have our grievances and we send it to them, PennDOT's gonna go, we don't care.
So there's nothing you do.
There's not, when it comes to PennDOT, there's nothing, I've been dealing with them for 10 years now and to me, they're a joke. But there's nothing, so,
You can't
How
get out
about
in
the
front
local
of it.
politicians?
try. You go ahead. We're fighting our butts off in Hamburg for that whole turnaround thing they're trying to do with the thing. No one cares. I mean, I'm just being blunt. No one cares. I think it's horrible because if they do pull out, there is that turn. I've almost rear-ended a car there before.
Yeah.
Okay.
The only thing you would have control over is where on
Yeah.
Monument Road you want them to go out. But the
No.
driveway's existing, and where they pull out on Monument, that's not a busy road, so
The
that's not.
monument isn't the problem in my mind, it's pulling.
It's
pulling
Monument
out
on
But
of
they're
the-
on a
22.
state,
Old
they're on a
22.
state road at that point, we have no say.
We have no say. We could say something. We could send them a letter, state our grievance.
And you know for,
Goes in
for
the
sure,
trash.
nothing happens.
No, I've never had
So
them
you
help.
can never get out in front of it. Like, I mean, like in Hamburg, you're kind of stuck behind it because this has been happening. You know, you see it from the middle. Now, you know, you're seeing this from our foreseeable problems, but it doesn't
They
matter.
released the traffic study with the warehouse on Maiden Creek, saying that it's what it's going to do with the truck traffic there is insane. And they were trying to tell PennDOT, no, this is going to be a huge problem for the future, and these roundabouts aren't big enough. Nope. So we could write a letter, we could do anything we want. PennDOT's not going to listen. They don't care. I'm just being honest. I'm tired of dealing with them because they just don't care.
It's frustrating.
It is frustrating, to be honest with you. If I became governor, I'd wipe out all of PennDOT and privatize it because it's a joke.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm very vocal about it because I'm so upset what's happening with Hamburg. It's disgusting the way they don't care about human life. Sorry,
No.
I'm just being honest.
No.
That's all.
Well,
Added more to the
I don't know
futility
what
of it.
The story is.
Sorry.
All right, so any more public comments?
You had enough of it?
You're welcome to come anytime. All right, so old business, we've addressed Ron's construction H&K group. At this point, it's technically out of our hands, but we're gonna get the plans and anybody can see them. All right, great. The Snyder subdivision, have we received anything from Josh?
No, I have, the township has gotten communication with that, and I contacted the lawyer in reference to that, but he indicated because he's ill, we haven't had any contact. I talked to Josh Snyder at this point, and I told him, you know, we communicate with him, but he has, apparently,
He bought it, I
he
think,
bought
now,
it.
yeah.
Yeah, it's his property.
Great. But he can't, can he not do anything until he combines them, or can he do
He
something
still
now that
has to
he
go
owns
through
it?
the subdivision, yeah, I mean, now that he finally, it's been like 2 years now?
Yeah.
Now that he's finally done, it, he has to come before us to combine it, if he wants to combine it.
South Schuylkill Property Group, that was kicked to the supervisors now, right?
Right.
Because they were given conditional approval, and they have not been there yet, to my knowledge. Ray Will Real Estate. You have any?
Yeah, I really have nothing to say.
He has to go before.
You're just here to visit. You want a Reese's, so it wasn't a wasted trip.
I just came here I came here and I learned a lot tonight already.
All right, all right.
He's gotta go before the zoning hearing board.
I didn't know if I needed to be here or not, that's why I showed up.
Better safe than sorry. All right, and then Hamburg Self-Storage was conditionally approved at the supervisor level. I do have plans here, so while we didn't meet all the requirements because we did not sign the improvements agreement that Russell has to put together, to avoid waiting 2 more months for a planning commission meeting, although there's only 2 of you in 93, so, and I can't sign my own plans, I'm assuming. So if the 2 of you can sign them, if that's okay, and then Craig can keep them here so that I don't have halfway signed plans. That way, we just need John, you know, or the alternate to show up to sign. And then the supervisors at the next month's meeting can sign off on these if Russell has his stuff done. Okay? I don't think we need a motion or anything for that, so. No new business? Any planning commission concerns outside of what we've already discussed? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
First and second. Thank you all for coming out.
One more question.
Yeah.
You mentioned there's this, an applicant's gonna be sending some plans over to the supervisors to look at. Who was that?
Another storage facility across from Worley's.
Okay,
They're building on that site there.
Along 61.
Yeah.
okay.
They've been same deal since the summertime.
Okay,
They've been kind of working through
all right.
all the stuff, but they're also waiting, they needed an NPDS permit because they're disturbing so much property, and so they've been dealing with the county.
So that's another set of plans I have not seen.
Okay, they're back there too.
Okay, no plans, okay?
Yep.
It has been seen. One last other question is, does the board here require these plans to be viewed before you come in to start making decisions on them or recommendations on
Sometimes
them?
we get emailed copies, but a lot of times, I mean, because again, we're not engineers. The engineer brings them and they go over them and we ask questions to the engineer while he's standing right here.
Okay.
I always felt,
But we're never, I mean, to my knowledge, from the point I've been here, we've never been asked to make a decision on plans we've only seen once. Usually they come here, there's commentary, Steve's looked at them, he has commentary, they have to bring them back at least a second time. So, and for us, that's every other month. So I mean, we've had 60 days to sit with a copy of plans that then gets revised to another copy, and then we're making it essentially,
Okay.
you know,
Well,
recommendation to
I
you.
just think it's wise that we all look at all the plans.
Sure.
In this case here, we talked about this extensive last meeting, and no one brought up the issue of that residential zoned area.
So, Steve, in any of the other places that you guys are, when we require them, I mean, obviously, I think this is ridiculous, in my opinion, that we need 6 printed plans. Can we require them to submit digital copies, which I'm assuming they do anyway because you get them, and then we could just forward them to everybody?
Yeah, most municipalities require both.
Do we require both?
What's that?
Do we require both?
I don't know if I do not know if the saldo, if the subdivision ordinance specifies that, but, I mean, most applicants, engineers do that anyway. And, I think that's been the case for, even the recent projects that we're discussing here.
I mean, I think it would be easy for you or Craig or whoever, I mean, at some point when plans are received, to just forward them to, you want your Reese's back? For the plans.
Yeah,
I think it's page 2.
It's easy enough to have, to just forward a drop-off link to.
Would that be
and,
sufficient?
Again, me being the planning commission, engineer, I don't always think that, to send that stuff to the supervisors, but it's easy enough to do. I mean, you just forward it along, but.
Yeah.
Once the county
Yeah.
records it, they now send digital copies back to the township.
Okay. And the county, at least in my situation, the county had them, and already had them back to us before we were ever even here. So the county had already given their approval. It's those little lines right up there. Yep.
A meeting held on the planning commission of Windsor Township.
So that Craig needs to fill out when the meeting was.
Jerry, come on, I'll show you.
But then you need to sign on this line right here, and then we'll need 2 more. Well, thank you all for coming. Hopefully we can get to the bottom of some of this stuff.